All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's session, which is searching for skew and more benefits of the new Strive Analytics. Today on our session, I'm Paige Parker. I'm one of the training and implementation specialists, and we also have on the call today the product manager for Strive, Shanna James.
Hello.
I want to start with a little business up front. Your mics are all muted, so if you have questions, you've got a little button at the bottom that says Q&A, or maybe it's the top, wherever your bar is for the session. You have a Q&A window, and you can click there and type any questions that you have about today's topics. If you have questions that are not related to appraisal analysis, we're going to ask that you email those to training@eduphoria.net, and we'll answer them at another time. But the Q&A, we're going to focus on things for today's topic. All right, our objectives for today are to understand the purpose and basic functionality of framework analysis, to discover skew or calibration needs in evaluation data and draw conclusions about the potential causes for that skew, to find purposeful selection of filters to generate data results and the type of file export that we need, and also to analyze relevant data to draw conclusions and recommend modifications to the evaluation process or professional learning offerings and measures used for student growth. So how does the data impact those decisions, the decisions about your process, your professional learning, and the measures that you're using for student growth?
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And since we have Shanna, our product manager, on the call today, I'm going to take advantage of that and pick her brain just a little bit. So Shanna, why create a new analysis tool, and how did you determine what was needed for this new version?
Yes, well, good questions for sure. That a big part of the decision to create a completely new experience was mostly influenced by conversations that we've had with district partners, and also slightly influenced by the needs for the new teacher incentive allotment. But a common theme that we heard across the board was being able to pivot and zoom in and out of the data, being able to filter to specific data sets, being able to compare more than 3 groups at a time for calibration and things like that. So we looked, when we looked at the existing analysis tool, we realized that it would almost be easier really just to start from the beginning. We wanted to start with the basics because it was super important to us to deliver an experience that was not only, it was going to be beneficial to the entire evaluation process as a whole. So that was super important to us. And really, we've been very methodical on how we release things. That's why we focused on the table first, releasing the table, and then really having that source of truth, and then being able to iterate and add visualizations and improve the user experience after that. So that was
right. So that being said, what are the differences between the new tool and the legacy tool?
The biggest difference really is, I kind of already talked about the legacy tool was a great tool, and we're going to continue. We're not taking that away right away because it's a very high level, almost a program analysis of different things. You had options to look at different areas, compare your goal, targets, where teachers are setting their goals and dimensions and matching that to professional learning. So that is still going to stay in the system, but we will eventually fold it all into the existing analysis. So really the biggest difference is being able to drill in and see more specific connections. It was important for us to figure out how to help an administrator kind of walk a path through the data and be able to look at different reasons things are happening, or different reasons for the skew or whatever. So I also want to add one of the biggest differences. again, I can't express how much we've put into the user experience of it all, but our designers even investigated, spent a lot of time looking into the colors and the graphs for accessibility reasons, for color blindness, and also being able to distinguish between when it's just printed in black and white and things like that. So yeah, a lot of thought has gone into this new experience, and I hope you guys feel that for sure. So I've been talking a lot now, so I would love to turn the tables and ask you a question, Paige, because you're the one that has really been working with districts on calibration, helping districts with calibration all over Texas. And you've been doing this without the new analysis tool. So how has that changed for you now, being able to use this tool to help support districts?
To me, it's just become a whole lot easier. In the past, you could get inter-rater reliability information. You could either use the legacy analysis tool to get some of that information, or you could run a document analysis report and manipulate that data in Excel to get the information that you needed. But the new analysis tool makes it easier. You don't have to do as much manipulation. It's all going to be there for you. The screenshot that you're looking at now shows all of the campuses in one district in a single table showing the results, whereas in the previous, you had to kind of do that in groups. And now we can look at everybody together. We can see, right now we're looking at the totals. So all of the dimensions averaged together to give the overall totals of distinguished, accomplished, proficient, etc. for each campus in a district. Those decisions about what we're looking at can easily be changed to get a different view, to see whatever information the campus or the district needs to see. And if you want to manipulate that data further, there's a download button. It's just below the exit button. It's an arrow pointing down to a little line. That's the download button that will take whatever you see in the table and put it in an Excel spreadsheet so that you can manipulate it further and get whatever you need to get out of that data.
To me, that's a cool thing, because whatever view you have on the screen, you're not having to go in and manipulate in the spreadsheet. Whatever view you have on the screen, you can hit that download button and it's going to produce a spreadsheet with that data. So I love that, which would include the filters and things like that. I would love you to show this. I'm ready for you to kind of show this off live, because I think that's super powerful, but I want to add a disclaimer before we dig in here. Currently, we're going to show some things that have not been, we're going to show some, have not been released yet. So
some
you guys
previews.
Yeah, you guys do have this, the table views. It's already out there. You guys can log in and start playing with your data, except don't do that till after this, because you'll get totally distracted. But we are super close to releasing. It's in testing now, the graphs are. So some of the stuff you should see within the next week or two. So, okay, take it away, Paige.
All right, so I'm going to go live. I'm going to switch over and build the table that we were just looking at in the system. So I'm logged in as an administrator, and I can go to appraisal analysis. And right now, all of you have this. So you can see the same screen that I'm showing right now. I'm going to look at observation data because we're not to the point where we have any summatives in this year, but I could choose summatives if I wanted to later on in the year. This is the right time to be looking at observation data and determining if there is skew in those observations. And let's get that corrected before we get to the summative time, but you can choose which document type you want to analyze. I can also choose the framework. So we're talking about T-TESS today, but I could run this same kind of analysis on the new T-TESS framework that's effective this year, or if you're using the counselor framework, the T-TESS framework, or if you have built any other frameworks for groups in your district, they're all going to be there. You could run that same kind of analysis. The date window is set to be this school year, so it's going to pull in only this year's observations. And right now I have it set to show me T-TESS totals, which means it's going to average all those dimensions together and give me one set for each campus, because I say by campus because I'm showing it by schools. I could choose to show my rows in a variety of different ways, and I'm going to show some different things in a minute. But for right now, we're going to look at schools, and I'm not going to put another group on here. I'm just going to say I want to look at that table and click my Create button. And so this is what we were looking at on the main screen just a minute ago. I have each of my campuses listed here. I can see the number of documents that were done. And when it says number of documents, that means observations, because that's what I selected. Up there is how many observation documents were done at each of these campuses. And then I can see the average percentages of all the domains and dimensions. What was the percentage of distinguished, accomplished, proficient, etc. on that campus? So I can get this information quickly and easily. I can also change that to look at other things. So maybe as a district administrator, I just want to see how my campuses are comparing. Maybe I want to go in a little bit deeper, or maybe I'll stay here for just a second. Maybe I want to see if my administrators are aligned with each other, calibrated to each other, but maybe I want to know if they're calibrated to the instrument as well. So if I want to know if they're calibrated to the instrument, what I should expect to see is sort of that bell curve, which with the lower numbers being at distinguished and improvement needed, a little bit higher at accomplished and developing, and my highest number at proficient, which is that rock star teacher that they always talk about in T-TESS. When I look at a couple of these campuses, if I look at danger zone, I don't see so much a bell curve as a slight zigzag. So it's mostly a straight line from 18 up to 22, down to 19, up to 22, down to 17. Very slight zigzag, but not the bell curve that I would expect to see. So I want to know, is this because one of my appraisers is kind of out of step with the others, or are they not calibrated to the instrument itself? Are they not understanding exactly what they're looking for and what those ratings should be? If I look at Bayside Elementary, I'm going to see more of the bell curve that I would expect to see. My lowest numbers are at distinguished and improvement needed, a little bit higher at accomplished and developing, with my highest number being there in the proficient column. So I can look at these overall numbers and get some information about which campuses do I need to go and dig in further and see what else is going on with them. One of the things that I can do is just take my schools or just change it up a little bit and say, I want to look at appraisers, but I want to group my appraisers by school. So now I can look at danger zone elementary and or middle school, and say, okay, it's not that that one of them's out of whack with the other. They're pretty in step with each other. So maybe it's the instrument that they're not so calibrated with, because these scores are not what I would have expected. I can look at Pine Valley Middle School and see that there definitely is something off between those administrators. So if their numbers are not in line, it's partly because there's a huge variation between Adam Chandler and Tad Martin and the percentage they have for distinguished and accomplished, and the percentage that Erica Kane has for distinguished and accomplished. So maybe we need to do some calibration between these three appraisers to get them more in line for their campus. And it's easy for me to dig in a little bit more just by changing my rows and my additional sorting up here at the top, choosing what I want to see. Maybe I've looked at this information and I want to know a little bit more specifically. This is their overall scores, but maybe one of the domains is making a difference in the scores. So I can go in and say, I want to see them by domains, and it will give me my averages for the planning domain, the instruction domain, and the learning environment domain. I don't have domain 4 on here because this is an observation document, and you don't get the domain 4 until the summatives, but I have those 3, and I can look at the overall scores there and see if that's giving me information that I need. I can also go in and say, I want to see them by dimension. And that's going to give me each individual dimension. So I can go through and look at those one at a time. Or if I want to limit it, I can limit it further by coming over here to my filter buttons, which are down at the bottom. And I can click on dimensions and say, I only want to see these. Or maybe I want to see 2 and 3. domains 2 and 3, but I want to see them by dimensions. So now I have limited it. I don't have those planning dimensions at the front, but I'm viewing it by dimension. And I can see those averages by dimension to see if maybe their scores are higher on planning than they are on the other two. And maybe they're a little more in line when I'm looking at the instructional domains. So I can look at the data in a variety of ways. Now I'm going to show you the magic that is coming soon that Shanna mentioned. I've been in the table view, which you all have. So everybody can go in now. Like Shanna said, don't do it now or I'll lose you. But you can go in and look at the table view and look at all of this information for your district. I can now come up to the top and switch to the graph view. And it's going to show me a graph version of that same information. So I'm seeing the campus and then each of my appraisers. If I float over a row, it's going to show me the percentages. So I can see how does this administrator compare to the overall campus score? How does this administrator compare to the overall campus score? And then because it's color coded, I can see some things jump out at me. Now you guys don't have the graph in you don't have this little drop down for the view yet, but it's coming soon. As Shanna said, it's in testing and soon will be out for everyone. And you'll be able to see a graph of any of the configurations. So if I went back and said, I just want to see the T-TESS totals, not by dimension anymore, then I'm seeing all my totals for the whole district, broken down by appraiser, and I can see how they did overall. If I want to focus in and say, okay, I need to know what administrators are giving more developing or more improvement needed, I could go over and click on just the developing rating here in the key up at the top, and it's going to show me for each one of my administrators as well as for the campus, what is my number of developing there. So I can kind of see and compare how everybody's doing and what those, what are the principals that are giving the most of those, or who are my easy graders? Who's giving the majority of distinguished? Where do I have those really high numbers? And maybe I'm even going to look at, do I not have any improvement needed? If an administrator doesn't have any, is that a concern? Do I think there are some in every group? Or at least at the developing level, do I have any zeros there? And if I do have any zeros there, is that something that's concerning me? So I can look at the information in a variety of ways and then just click back in the graph to get back to my overall picture. Additional filters that I can use, I can say, maybe I want to know whether my appraisers are evaluating the same way for all of the different subject areas. So I can come in and say, I want to limit this just to math. And I'm going to apply that. So I'll see my overall math scores, and I can scroll down and take a look. And when I get down to Tim Taylor, he has only accomplished and distinguished. These are the overall totals. So in all areas, his averages are all distinguished and accomplished well, it's only one math teacher, so that may be part of the issue here. But we've got a large number here of just one level and nothing lower than accomplished. Let's go up and switch to language arts for my subject and see if it's comparable. So I'm going to click there and go down again to Tim Taylor. And now I've got almost all proficient and a few accomplished, but no distinguished in language arts. So is there a discrepancy in the way this particular appraiser is evaluating teachers based on different subject areas? Maybe Tim is like me, and when he's in a math class, it's all a little over his head, and so it sounds pretty distinguished. And maybe that's why the ratings are a little bit higher. But you can look at those subject area ratings and see if that could be the cause of some of the skew on your campus. Maybe it just means that the appraisers need a little more instruction in evaluating in those areas that they didn't teach. You can look at that information here by looking at either in the graph view or in the table view. I can see all of that. And if I want to go down all the way to the teacher level, I can say that I want my rows to be appraisees. I can have them grouped by school the way I do now. Or if I want them to be a little more anonymous when I'm looking at the data, I can clear that group out and I'm just seeing all of my teachers and what their ratings are. And I could go in and look at that by dimension if I wanted to as well. Now, when you look at the dimension view, because each teacher only gets one rating on each dimension, I'm going to see here for this particular teacher, they have 100% distinguished because they only got rated on 2.1 one time and they got distinguished. For 2.2, they were also distinguished. Boy, Anne is an exceptional teacher because she's distinguished on 2.3 as well. So you'll be able to see what each teacher got if you want to drill down that far to look at appraisees. You can group them by school if you want to, or you can group them by appraiser. So I could say who are the appraisers and what teachers did they evaluate and what did those scores look like. So I can do pretty much anything I want to with these choices that I have up here for what's displayed in my columns, dimensions, domains, or totals. I can select what I want to display in my rows over here on the left. So right now I'm looking at appraisees, I'm looking at teachers, and I'm grouping them. And that's what's the green names over here is what I have selected in my rows. And then my additional sort is how do I want to group them? And right now I have them grouped by appraisers. So the appraisers' names are showing up in black. With those choices, I can get a ton of data. But then I can also come down and narrow it down a little bit further by looking at a specific subject area or specific dimensions or domains, or I can say I want to look at appraisee types. If you have more than one appraisee type that all have observations, maybe I have some first year teachers that did get observations and I want to see just that group. I can narrow it down to any that are first year. I don't have any of those in my district. Also, if I limit my appraisee type to waiver teachers, they're not going to show up either because the waiver teachers don't get an observation. So since I'm doing observations, that wouldn't help. But if you have multiple appraisee types, you can look at it that way. If I want to just see one person, if there's somebody I'm concerned about in my district, I can go and see everything that they have done, or I can look at grade levels, or I can even look at different documents. So if you have multiple observation documents that you're using, you can look at those. You can narrow it down to just those. So I can filter down to all kinds of configurations. All right, let's talk about why I want to do all those kinds of configurations. We're looking for skew, and I grabbed this off of the teacher incentive allotment website. There's information about skew on the T-TESS website as well. But this I thought was a good definition that it is defined by the teacher observation data that's trending higher or lower because of factors unrelated to teacher effectiveness. So it could be because of the appraiser they have, because of the campus they're on, their teaching assignment, their grade level. Those are things that we were just looking at. So if math teacher versus language arts teacher, that might impact the teacher's ratings. Maybe their appraiser, if Erica Kane was my appraiser, I'd be happy because she gave almost all distinguished and accomplished. Maybe the campus culture makes it different from campus to campus. So those are things that you can look at to determine whether those are accurate numbers or whether there's skew that requires some additional calibration to get everybody back in line. And I wanted to show a couple of examples. In this example, and I just pulled these as screenshots, and I'm showing both the table view and the graph view, but you can compare dimensions by school. So I can look at Bayside Elementary and see that they had 3.23% distinguished for domain 2 or dimension 2.1, but they had 0 distinguished for dimension 2.2. Is there a reason for that? I mean, I had 25% distinguished at this campus for 2.1 and 0% distinguished for 2.2. So within one campus, I can see discrepancies from dimension to dimension, and I would need to go look for the reasons for that. And there may be some good reasons. It may be that, well, I can't think of one for from dimension to dimension, but it may be that my campus has not worked on content knowledge and expertise. Maybe I have all new teachers, and so they're not as distinguished in that dimension as they are in achieving expectations, which is 2.1. So I can look at my campus, at my teachers, at the planning that we've done, the training that we've done, and try to determine if that skew is explainable and if it's something I need to do something about. I can also look at campus skew. So between or on one campus, let me look at these are my individual campuses, and I'm looking at who has 0 for distinguished versus 12% for improvement needed. So they're skewed a little bit to the needs some help side, whereas I have Alabama High School 28% distinguished versus 0% improvement needed. Is there a reason for that? Maybe Alabama High School has all of my veteran teachers, and so I could expect those scores to be a little bit higher. So you can change the information that you're looking at to ask and answer a variety of questions. Here's skew within a campus, and I mentioned a little bit earlier Erica Kane and her super high distinguished and accomplished numbers, whereas you look at her counterparts at the same campus, they're in the 2% range while she's at over 12%. So that's something I might want to say they need to calibrate amongst themselves. That campus needs some recalibration because they're not evaluating the same way on that one campus. And then we also looked at subject area skew just a little bit. I can go in and look at right now I'm looking at all of my appraisers at all campuses, but I'm looking at mathematics specifically to see, are they in line? And I have everything from 0s to 25% on the distinguished from campus to campus or from appraiser to appraiser. And that's something I would want to just investigate a little bit more and see what are the reasons behind it. Again, sometimes there are valid reasons, and sometimes it's something that's pointing out concern. All right, Shanna is going to talk a little bit about the campus level data.
That was a lot. That is like so powerful, and you did an awesome job. So thank you so much for going over that. Yeah, I mean, so the campus level data, like it's a powerful tool, but you can get a lot at the campus level too, in addition to skew, just by drilling into specific domains and dimensions and to identify those areas. So I added, you did a great job on the live, so I'm just have some examples here, but just some ideas of how you might use it at the campus, just trying to identify different areas of need, right? So you could, again, you could do campus level calibration, but you could look at specific dimensions. This is actually a view of dimensions by domain. So they're grouped by domain, and you could see the specific ones there. Then the next slide actually shows where you would click on possibly and look at that alignment. I'm not sure why the numbers weren't shown a while ago, but the numbers are in there. So you could align and you could actually look at this and figure out like where those areas of need are. This will help you determine possibly, areas that you need to focus on for professional learning. You could also, by clicking on the one, like I can tell here in my developing, differentiation has a pretty high need there. We have a lot of teachers in that developing stage. So if I clicked on, and I kind of set up differentiation there, then I could see a list of all of my teachers. And again, it's scrollable there, but I could identify those teachers that have scored developing in that specific dimension. So then I could either pull them together, have a little PLC group, or even, offer district or campus professional learning in those areas as well. All right. This is just another example of dimensions grouped by appraiser in a table view. This, it's funny that we both like highlighted Erica Kane. I guess Erica is, I remember her. I watched All My Children, so I remember Erica Kane. So I would guess that she might be a standout. All right. And in the next slide, I'm not like Paige, you totally blew me away. Like I can't even match how you talked about it because you did so great. The next slide here is just showing the comparison of dimensions by appraisees. So you could look and scan down. We're looking, I think, at 2.2 and 2.4. And then you could kind of scan down and match those colors. So you could easily see based on the colors where you have areas for developing or improvement needed in those areas. So
what I love, Shanna, is that you're showing different groupings than I did, and you're going down as a campus person, you're going down to the teacher level. So I would expect to see some things that are close. I see distinguish when I'm looking at these two different dimensions. But if I saw one that had a distinguished in one dimension and developing in another, that might make me wonder, what's the difference there between how the teacher scored so high on one and not so high on the other? So to me, looking at all these different views shows even more of what you can do with the tool.
Absolutely. And one thing that we don't, I don't believe it's wired up yet, but is still to come. Another thing you would want to do as a campus leader would be able to like click into that evaluation and actually see the the corroborating evidence of why they did get distinguished or developing or improvement needed. So that is soon to come, being able to see the actual evaluation, to see that evidence and the data there that was captured during that observation. So,
and speaking of more to come.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good segue. I just want to say there is a lot more that we have in store and we have planned for analysis. As many of you probably have questions about walkthroughs. We're definitely exploring bringing those walkthroughs into this tool, and again, the other things. Being able to see scores is something that is currently in development right now. So you would be able, like right now, we focus on seeing the percentages. And so being able to bring in and view it as a score or average scores, total scores, that type of thing, we're going to have the ability to do that. And we're also bringing in student growth information. So if you'll switch to the next slide, I want to kind of talk a little bit about, again, teacher incentive allotment has been a big part of making sure, because we want to make sure that you guys have the tools that you need for teacher incentive allotment, but also we want to make sure that it's helps the entire process. So one thing that we did release just recently, I think at the very end of the summer, is the ability to add student growth scores to your summative documents. So this is huge because this is where we're going to grab those student growth percentages, and we're going to take that information. Now, we did release last spring the ability, if you're using the portfolios, the teacher could go in and actually rate the students either met or didn't meet or exceeded growth. But this allows an administrator to capture that. So wherever that information comes from, if you have an outside program, if you're doing pre and post test or whatever, they're going to be able to type in those percentages within that student growth, within that summative. And that's going to be captured as a part of that summative document. There is an option that you have to do if you want that. It's not automatic. You have to go into the summative template in the options, and you have to turn that on. So make sure you do that. And then once that happens, and once you turn those on, then you'll be able to capture those student growth percentages. So On the next slide, I want to talk about the TIA export. So we know that you have you can get all the data out, and we've said all along you can export to document analysis, but now we actually have developed a specific report or export that is aligned exactly with the formatting that you have to submit for the teacher incentive allotment, the data submission. I added some key points here because this only works with T-TESS. So if you are using your own framework or your own rubric, if you have something besides T-TESS, it will not work with this specific report. Good news is you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to get the information out of analysis soon enough when we have the scores. But this works with T-TESS. We're only using the summative because it includes the student growth scores. And so what this does is it only includes domains 2 and 3. So it also aligns exactly with the spreadsheet that you have to submit. So it includes domains 2 and 3. It does not give the words. You don't have to do like a find and replace. It gives you the scores. And then you also, it will calculate that percentage of student growth that either met or exceeded growth, which is also a requirement for the teacher incentive allotment report. So
what that means, if I can just type in for a second, is it's going to take these two numbers that are typed in and average them together for you so that it'll show up on the report as an average of those that met or exceeded. So you won't have to do that math. Mm-hmm. Not doing the math is always a big part for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so this report has already been released. It is limited to those district level administrators. So this is not like a campus level. This is a district level report. So you will be your appraisal administrator that views appraisals or whatever, and they will be able to see this report. Just a side note on these right now, we've released it, but also there are a couple of issues with it that are being fixed as we speak. So don't, like the domains 2 and 3, it went out and it still had the other domains. So we're fixing that. If you like go in there and look at it right now, you might see more, but it'll be released before the end of the week. It'll be updated. So yeah, so very cool. That was a whole lot of information. You guys, there was a lot of not a lot of questions. So if anybody has any questions that you want to throw in, or if there's anything that we missed, let us know.
I'm not hearing from our moderators, so I'm going to guess we don't have any questions we need to address at this time. But you can always, if you think of something after the session is over with, you can always contact us at training@eduphoria.net, and we'll be happy to get back to you and answer your questions that way. And then also, we always like to remind everybody how to connect to us. So if you found out about this webinar from the banner and you didn't know about it before that, you might want to consider signing up for updates. You can go to our news and announcements section in our online help. And if you go to the online help guide, which you can hit the question mark or the help button from anywhere inside the application, and it'll take you here. Or you can go to eduphoria.zendesk.com, I'm pretty sure. And when you go in there and go to news and announcements under company news, you can click on how can I receive announcements, and you'll fill out this little form on the right, and that'll get you on the mailing address if you want to get those updates and not rely on seeing the banner. And then you can also follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is where the recording of this video or this webinar will be posted. And all of our other webinars are posted there, along with some additional training videos. So if you want to subscribe to that, that would be great.
Lots of questions about sharing and having the presentation and the recording, and questions of when it will be up. So do you want to talk about that process real quick?
So Zoom, we can't get it up for, I think it's 24 hours. So it won't be up today, but it should be up tomorrow late. And it will be posted on our YouTube channel. So you can go there to find it, or you can always go into our online help guide and go to the webinars, and there'll be a link to archived webinars, and you'll be able to click on it there. So we do post them in both in Zendesk and to the YouTube channel. Zendesk links out to the YouTube channel so that you can see the recording later on. But again, it's at least 24 hours before we can post it. All right. If there are not any other questions.
There's a couple of things. The question of when will walkthrough analysis be available, and I'm going to say to be determined. It is on the plan. We are going to we are including that. We really wanted to start with the matrix questions first, so we have to bring in those check boxes as a part of that analysis. But the graph view should be available. I would say it is in testing now. I would say by the end of this week, but then everybody would be like, why did you promise that? But very, very soon, by the end of next week, for sure, it'll be out there, because it's done and ready to go. We just have to make sure that it has gone through the thoroughly tested.
All right. Again, if questions come up after we sign off, remember training@eduphoria.net. And we hope that you have a great rest of the week. And we'll see you on a webinar again soon.